Hey, hi everybody. Hope you're doing great with the exercises, even though this time is just the first part, sorry. No Pinia for me today, which is a bit sad, but I will be hopefully showing some interesting parts as well. And sorry in advance for my voice. I'm a little bit sick, so my throat is a little bit rough, but I should be able to do it. All right, so the exercise here is about building the chat box. So having the box that we can see here, the button as well to open it, and then building some of the HTML, the props of the components. So some of the organization there. All right, so I can see here on the side that I have a chat box that is completely empty and already calling out to be filled here with the code. And I imagine that I will probably have to create some other components when I look at the specs or the exercise, something like the chat bubbles or something like that. Okay, so the first thing it says is that the chat box component should accept some props. Those props are the messages, the users, the current user, so myself, and I imagine that's supposed to align the messages on the left or the right. And then users typing, which I imagine is to have the 3 dots like on Messenger, WhatsApp, and any other message app. Okay, so what I'm going to start doing is add the script here. So I'm going to add script, and I want to set the language to TS, and of course, I want to use the setup script. Okay. Copilot is getting a little bit ahead, but it's also wrong. So I'm just going to disable Copilot. Oh, come on. It's too zoomed in. Copilot disable, enable Copilot. Perfect. Lovely. Okay. That way it will be easier for the for everything. So we need to get the prop. We need to define some props. So we have 2 ways to do that, right? We have both. We have the TypeScript version or the JavaScript version. In this case, since we have the types and we have some specific types for the kind of objects we have for the messages, the users, I rather use the full TypeScript version here. So I will have an array of messages, which, by the way, I should be able to look at from the widget, I think. Yes. Here I have everything. So I can even look up if I want by command clicking, I can check the types. So if I do that, I can say that the message is required and is an array of message. And this looks like the correct import. So I'm going to leave that that way. Then we have a list of all the users. So that one is going to be also import from the types. I'm using the auto import every time. So every time I see the type, I just press enter to add the import. I want to know which user I am. So again, same type. And then there is a user's typing. We can see here, which is a Boolean, I imagine. Where is this? Oh, no, it's an array of users. Okay. So what I'm not sure if, so they say this one should be non-required. Okay. Oops, typo there. There we go. Okay. I'm going to add the props here because I likely need to use the props within the setup. Otherwise, it's not really necessary. Okay, so that's the first section. I'm going to have the chat on the side just to make sure I can see the comments sometimes. All right. So now we want to start by displaying all the messages in the chat box as chat bubbles, and then including some information. So here, we're probably going to have to first display the button that allows us to toggle the chat completely. So let's do that first. So I probably need to know if I'm open or not, right? That's going to be a local state. So I'm going to add some local state here. I'm going to add it below the props. So is open, and this is going to start as false. And here we're probably going to have some box at the bottom. So I know it's going to be some fixed something bottom right. I don't know exactly, how much offset we have, but something like that, right? So I can use emmet, so I can tap that to create my div here, and then I will figure out exactly the classes there. I want some button, and this button should have some icon inside. Now I've seen there is an icon chat, and I think I'm not SVG expert and I cannot really read a path like this, but I think this is a chat icon given the name. So I'm gonna do chat icon. What was the name again? Icon chat.
Quick request. Could you zoom in for us a little bit so we can see it a bit more?
On the editor?
Yeah, yes.
The editor is going to be a bit hard for me. If I zoom in, I cannot see anything. Here is this. This is maximum. I cannot do more. Otherwise, every time I open this is going to be like 2 letters on the side.
Okay. At least we know.
Let me see. The font use is very hard for read for many people. I can disable the theme, toggle theme.
Thank you. I know it's sometimes hard when like doing these lives. It's always like,
no italics.
Ooh.
Okay, so no italics. Should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I always forget. I like the italics for myself.
Thank you.
Right. No worries. Okay. We have the open. So I was on the open thing, the icon chat, which I was expecting to have auto completion, but I didn't. So I'm gonna be that way, and I'm gonna see if I have something appearing. Apparently, no. Do I have any offsets here? Maybe I need some size. So let's add some size here. Apparently, I need to set the text color. Oops. Okay, so now it's here. Now I need to add some other classes for, well, just to line it up correctly. So probably this is button something, right? Yes. Now I don't know exactly, apparently I don't know exactly if there is a proper value here based on the application, but I'm just gonna give it 10 pixels on each. So it should be at the bottom. And I'm gonna make the button a blue background, I think. It is, which one? 500, probably. All right, let's add some padding as well there. Maybe that's a bit too much, and make it rounded. Okay. Yeah, I have a typo here. That's why it looks gray, white. Okay. So now what I want is to toggle that when I click. So let's add that, click, and say, please open. Yeah, the completion is telling me there. Okay, equals true. I imagine that so sometimes you also want to do the none is open to toggle value, but in this case, I don't think we're going to show the button once we have the chat. So we will have probably a different button. And so this button, we can use Wave or VShow. It won't change much for this case. VShow, since it's toggling and it's always there, it's always on top of the page. And so we show it if is false. So when we click, it should disappear. Okay. And on the other case, we want to display what is going to be the container of the messages. So apparently we have some classes ready for that. We have a box thing. So I'm going to start by doing that. It doesn't have anything. And I need to make sure that we only display this one if it's open. All right. What else do we need here? We probably need to specify some of the size. Again, here the size apparently seems to be, oops, a bit too much. It's big. I don't have any content, so that's probably why it doesn't appear. Okay. There you go. Okay, so it's not exactly on the right position, but we're gonna figure out that on the way. Okay, so we have the box. We probably want to set a background so we can better see the actual size of this thing. And the color that has been chosen is gray. 300. Apparently, there's also a dark gradient, so let's do that as well, which is going to be darker. Got the gray here. Okay, looking better this time. We probably want to make it a little bit rounded as well. So rounded, and then we're gonna add the content. So what do we need here? We need a header. So the header is probably gonna have some. Let me check the actual the version that we need to finish. It says customer support chat. So let's add customer support chat. Then we're gonna have the messages. So that's gonna have some div that we're gonna figure out later, and then we have a footer, and the footer is gonna contain the actual input or text area to submit. So that's going to be some. Let's just put an input for the moment. Let's see. Okay. So I have the main structure here. I want to style this a little bit, so I'm just gonna add a few classes to change the colors of the background, etc., etc. So I know that the header probably want to be a little bit darker, so that's going to be a background gray, and we can probably do 400. How much should we say? 200. 200 for the light theme, and the dark one is going to be a little bit darker, so 900. Okay, looks a little bit different that way. And so we want to add some extra space for the text. Let it breathe. Finally, some padding here. Force, fine. Seems to be fine. We want to, what do we want? Want to move that on the side? No, not necessarily. Apparently, we want to add a button at the bottom, just right here. Now for the button, click, and here we're gonna close. I'm gonna just put an X first, okay? And we probably want to move that to the side, so we're just gonna use a flex box here, flex, specify between, and item center, I think should be fine. Okay. Now, in the correction, they use something a little bit better than these cross. So I'm gonna use that. It's just a plain SVG. I'm gonna copy paste. I imagine it would have been better to have a component here, the same as icon for opening the chat. This is just a small arrow like that. And I probably want to add some space as well here. So we're going to do that so much. Probably I would have put less padding on the right. So since it's already has some padding on the header. The spacing looks fine. Okay. The footer is going to be very similar. We want to add the same space on the sides, so that looks a bit more consistent. Now, I'm not sure why this one is a little bit on the side. I did X, or maybe we can use a different padding. I will actually look how it looks like once we have the content, which makes it different. So the people who don't have Tailwind suggestions, that's an extension that you can find if you look for Tailwind, which is just the Tailwind CSS extension. It's the default, the first one you're going to find. Okay. What else? What else we have? Okay, so let's leave this way. We already have the input. So what do we want? We have a few classes, right, to make the input better, I think. Yes. Probably want to make it the full width. That's better. And we probably want to add some padding inside. Maybe not. No, actually looks nice. Do we want anything else here before moving into the actual messages? Input ref. some placeholder would be nice, right? So placeholder, what can we say? Type your message. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, we're going to handle the rest afterwards. We can also make it a block. We could also use a text array, by the way. I might change it to a text array. It's just that I probably need a different class, but I don't know if they have it. Yeah, let's just give it. Just leave it as an input. Okay, so the content, the actual messages. The untagged messages are a bit more complex, so I'm going to move that within a component itself, but I still want to have the wrapper component here, right? So let's do that. Apparently, there is another helper class, which I think comes from Daisy UI, which has a lot of helper class, which is messages. We want to add some space, so something like padding 4. That looks like a lot, but okay, we'll see. And since it's the chat, we definitely want to have an overflow, not hidden, but probably scroll, right? I want to scroll that. We want to limit the size, so we could fix the size. We could also make it responsive, but here I'm just gonna add a fixed vertical height. This is the max, so it doesn't really resize. And then we need to actually add the messages. So the messages are going to be the component that we want to write, which is still the second one, right? The chat box has chat bubbles. Okay, chat bubbles. Chat bubble. Probably not going to have any content. It's going to have everything passed as a prop. And we probably want to do v4 message messages. I think we have that, right? Yes, perfect. And since the messages are of type message, we can add the ID here. And then we want to pass an image, the image of the user, which means we probably want to have the actual user. Now, I suppose this is going to be required. Message.use. Okay, so we only have the user ID, so we need to figure a way. That's why we need the array of user, right? So probably something like get user of with a message.user ID. We can actually even inline it here with a find, I think. Anyway. That's the user. We need a message or the message text, but I think the message is just fine. So we can just pass the whole message. And what else do we need? The name of the user who sent it. So that's going to be the user. It's going to have the image, the time the message was sent. That's in the message, and the message text within the bubble, which is also in the message. So I think we are good to go. Let me just do a double check. For the moment, we're good to go. We'll probably come back later on. Okay, so let's add this function, get user. It's based on a user ID, which is going to be a string. And we're going to return props.users.find user. So the user ID should be equal to user ID. Now, the problem is this function is going to return undefined. And I don't really want to be that undefined. So I guess we'll make these prop, which is not always available. Okay, so let's build the chat bubble.view component. Okay, have a small snippet here, so I'm just gonna use that to create the script and the template. Nothing too fancy. If you don't have any snippets, you can look up VS Code snippets. It's not in a plugin or anything, although I think there are probably plugins that install snippets, but you can actually customize them the way you want. The syntax is not too complicated. So it's very easy to add your own depending on how you work, if you have TS, if you have SAS or other things, right? Just checking the chat from time to time to make sure I don't miss the questions. Okay, so now we're going to define the props. we just added that. So let's do props, define props. I'm going to use, again, the syntax object, or the type, the generic or the type version of the define props. So we need the user, I said, and apparently this is not always there. So we're going to make it optional. We need the message. This one is necessary. Not message, but message. And we're going to add it. And I think that's it, right? Let me check again the top box here. The user, the key, the message. Okay. Maybe we add something else later on. Okay, so, and now I want to see them appear. So apparently Daisy UI has a very convenient class called chat bubble or something like that. And the way it goes is we have a chat. So this is going to be the container. And then we're going to have the avatar, depending on how it is. Well, probably this is going to be handled with a flex or something. So we're going to have a chat, apparently it's called image, and I can add the avatar class as well. We'll talk about that just later. And then we have, looking on how it should supposed to look. We need a header. So this is from Daisy UI. And in the header, we're going to put the how long ago it was sent, and I think the name of the user. And then on the last section, we're going to have the actual content. So this is where we have a chat bubble. Chat bubble. Hey, let's see. It's not there. Let's try it again. Let's try with just message for the moment, even though we need to handle the markdown and everything. I don't feel like toggling the box all the time, so I'm going to force these to true. Okay, much better. We have much better content here. Okay. So the message probably not going to be the whole message object, but the text. Okay. All right. Let me just. So all the messages here are on the left, but of course we probably need to put them on the right or the left, depending on how we, depending on who is talking. We're gonna parse that with Markdown. So I know there are some Tailwind classes like pros that we can use to improve. There is some extra styling going on, so I'm just gonna add that right now. We have, I'm gonna make the background different. So I'm using a dark theme, so that's going to be this one. Oh, are you sure? Okay. Yeah, that's better. So we want to take apparently as much as width as possible, but it's a little bit better too. And I don't think this is going to change anything. Oh, it does, making the full width. Okay. Let's add the image of the user. So the image of the user, if we have the correct user, apparently there is a user avatar. So I should be able to do image dot so some size, and we probably want to make it a full round. So user avatar here, it doesn't really help to have the out. The site is probably not working because it's not a block. So what I'm going to do is that into a container. Probably depends on the classes I have here. I don't really know them, so I'm just going to make this rounded full. We're going to make a container here, and then move that. Okay. This looks a little bit better. They probably need to be on the side if it's the bot, but at least we have the actual images. We need the time the message was sent. So for that, we're going to use Vue use, I think, which apparently is already installed as a plugin, right? You use Nuxt, yes. So we can use time ago. So here we're going to say use time ago. And here we can pass a time. Now the time is going to come from the props. So it's going to be message dot created at. And do we need anything else? No. How do we call these? Message. Relative time. Okay. So we put these here, and I think this is in the header, right? Not in the avatar. All right, here. So we're gonna put here. We're gonna put the username actually, dot name, and then here we can use the time element. Oh, come on. Which I don't know by heart, but let's see. We can use the relative time. Yes. Okay, looking good. 9 minutes, 8 minutes, 4 minutes. Great. Let me check the messages real quick. So the dark gray and the reason we have dark and dark background and normal background is because one is for the dark color scheme and the other one is for the light color scheme. You can find more about this in the Tailwind documentation. Way better explanation than mine here. We don't have the chat bubble, I think, but the small trail that usually has on a chat. But I'm also missing the chat end and chat start, which I should apply. Okay. So here, I need a way to know who sent these. And depending on who sent these, I'm going to pass well, the chat end is going to be if itself. So we can imagine we have a prop called is mine. And the other one is going to be chat start, imagine, which is going to be the opposite. We could also use a ternary here. So is not mine. Okay, let's see. Is mine. We can just boolean. We don't need it to be fine. And so these should be easy to pass because we have me here as a prop. So on the message here, I can say is mine. Okay, I need to pass this. Me.id equals message LBS user ID. All right, cool. So we have the proper time, the proper styling. I think we're missing a few extra things. Yeah, the markdown, right? These should be markdown. So we have there is a library installed called Markdown Vue 3 or something. Not my personal choice. For Markdown, I would use marked, which is just a function and should be easier to integrate for these kind of things. And also is typed, which is not the case for this library here, but let's use it anyway. I don't want to run out of time either. So apparently it doesn't have types. So I'm just going to tell TypeScript to shut up and let me work. The markdown is going to be here. Okay. Just remember that be careful about passing, especially you have server-side rendering, be careful about doing these kind of things with user-generated content. It could not always be correctly sanitized. You have to check the library itself, the Markdown ID or the other Markdown library. They don't always, I mean, most of the time they do not sanitize the content, so whatever is passed here. So they provide in the documentation ways to sanitize the content to avoid some security risk you might be exposing your server to with this kind of practice. But here we're gonna just move on with this. Also because it's client side, so it's fine. Should be fine. So do we have any props? Apparently it's source message.text. And we are gonna use class full. So this is just to make it look a little bit better. And it doesn't have any style. This is because I didn't add the prose, which makes things look a little bit better. It's too big. And there is a bit too much space here. So I'm gonna, I think it's padding. Yeah, let's a little bit. Everything else should be good. Okay. We don't have the names of the people though. User.name. I think it doesn't appear on the. Oh, it does. Oh, it's here. I didn't see. Okay. Let's make it a little bit more obvious here. All right. It needs some space. So, what is the name? Unbreakable space. Okay. All right, we're done with the second part here. Display the messages from the current user on the right side. Oh, I was doing these at the same time. Okay. On the left. So I haven't customized the color, but we could make the color of this change. But I'm going to move on because I think there are other interesting things to look at. So if you support Markdown, we added that. We just added that. And underneath, the messages provide a text input for the current user to type new messages. Okay, so this is the footer we added. This is more interesting, right? So we have the input. Now we want to make it send messages. When the user presses enter inside the text input, it should emit a new message event with a payload of the type message. Okay, so this means that here, no, not here, sorry, on the chat box, yes. We're going to use define emit. Define emits. And this is also typed. Oh, and this is the syntax. So we're defining a function in TypeScript. So we have this object notation with multiple functions here. So the name of the event is called new message. And apparently, it has a new message here, which is the type message. It returns back. And now we're going to make a function. I'm going to create a function that send message. And this function is going to emit the message with a message here, with the actual object. So this object, I'm going to have to build it. Now, I'm going to need to have all the properties. So there is a library, an ID for the ID. Then we have the user ID, which is probably props.me.id. Create that, which is going to be new date, I imagine. And then we have the actual text. Now the text, I'm going to use just a prop, text message, value. Just a prop, just a ref, sorry. And here, I'm going to define these as an empty string. Now I also want to empty the text messages after sending it. And then on the input here, we're going to use VModel text message. So we can actually get the actual content. And then we're going to use, not submit, sorry, but keep press, I believe, dot enter. And so I want, I don't think I'll make it I won't allow having new lines, but if you want to add it in the future, it's worth adding an exact. So it means that it only triggers if just enter is pressed. It doesn't trigger if you also press Control or Shift. You can also make it the other way around. You can also check if Shift is pressed in the function I'm going to add here, which is going to be send message. And in that scenario, I also want to do a prevent default. Now, in this case, it doesn't change much. But in the case of a text area, the prevent default is going to prevent from adding a new line before sending the message, which will be useless. What else do we want? It should emit the message. OK, so let's see if it works. Hey, it's empty. So clearly, I emit something else. Let me reload just in case. Sometimes the HMR, there we go. The HMR breaks in between, right? So can we define? The message cannot be in define here, or at least not the way I'm building it. So this is fine. In the correction, they do make it possibly undefined, but it doesn't have any types error. Okay, so what else do we want to do? New messages should always be displayed at the bottom of chat box. In other words, you should not have to manually scroll, which is not the case right now. We have multiple ways of doing this. There is a way of doing it on CSS only, but since I don't have full control on the actual chat, and I don't know it by heart, the CSS version, it's not something you use every day. The other way is to just watch the array of messages, even the length, in the chat box and make it scroll. And by make it scroll, I mean you have to make the context here, the content here scroll. So the way we do that is we can do props.messages. We can actually just watch the length. It doesn't really matter much. And here is when we're going to trigger, as we're going to change the message box scroll top, I think. So we're going to have to get that as a ref. So let me add that first. Message box equals ref. And so I don't want to have any here, so I'm going to add HTML element, I think. Scroll top. Scroll top. Like that, right? Like that. It's fine. It's supposed to go to the message box the value, and we can just use scroll height to see where it should. Now, it's complaining because the value can be undefined. So what I'm going to do is sync. I'm going to do a wait next tick. This is going to be necessary because we want to wait for Vue to render before actually do the scrolling. And here, if we have a message box of value, we do this. And we can remove that. So remove this one. There we go. And so here, as you can see, I can scroll. Oh yeah, I need to actually set the message box here. So this is probably going to be the div here, right? Let me verify this is the one, but it should be this one, the messages. So ref equals message box here. So this is a template ref. Let me just reload just in case here. The message, and now it's scrolling at the bottom. New messages should always be displayed. Okay, we did that. And finally, display a chat bubble with a loading indicator instead of a text for each of the users inside the user typing prop. Okay, let me check that prop actually. So here, the chat box. I do this. Okay, it gets filled. I imagine it's just the bot. Let me just try with one here, reactive. Yeah, the bot. So this is the user object of the bot. And we probably want to display this with a bubble that has just the content would be just the 3 dots, I imagine. So let's see. How do we do that? Uploading. I wonder if there is a 3 dots something. The app loading is there. Okay, that's the 3 dots we want to. Let me just look what it looks like. Loading. Okay. So I imagine that we can make a variation of our chat bubble here. And we can say, now this is a bit weird. Like I will still only write. They say to do it for each user typing. So that means for a user in users typing. And I guess that's why the message can be optional and the person on the chat was right. Watching the length of the array, Daniel is asking if watching the length of the array is more performant than watching the whole array. I would say, wait, it depends on the arguments you pass to watch, but yeah, generally, if we only need to see if there are new entries on the array, and since messages are not disappearing, this works in our case. But if we are actually changing we're actually only keeping the last 10 messages, for example, then my watcher wouldn't work. But you can also watch the last message instead, just to make sure it changes. Okay, so here we have the user for each user, and then we want to do a key. What would be the key here? Good question. I don't think we can have a proper key. Because the way it's done right now, you have multiple times the same user typing. So here, the key, we use the user ID, which is the only ID we have. This is going to fail, but whatever. Let's not add a key here. We don't need it. So there is no message in this case. We do have the user, and it's not my message, but we can always check, I guess. I mean, is there any reason to set my message? We know it's not mine, so let's go to here. And then inside, I'm going to add the uploading, because this is like it's not real, it's not markdown. So we need to change a little bit the inside here. So the message now is optional. And so here, we're going to reset. Argument is not assignable. Okay. Let's just do new date. And here, let's do, oh yeah, here. We have multiple ways. We need a way to pass the slot, that's for sure. This allows the uploading to appear. Now, we probably want to do this if there is a message, and otherwise display the slot. So now, there we go. We have the 3 dots. The just now here doesn't make any sense, right? So I think here I'm going to do the if message. There is no relative time either, so yeah. And we probably need to do something like someone is typing, or maybe not. What do we want to add here? Let me see. They added a bunch of extra classes here to make this look a little bit better, like making it smaller, and also changing the opacity. I would have changed the color instead, but also works. What else do we have? Some space we could add as well. Do we add it here? The bottom? Yeah, it looks a bit weird. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so then we want to display probably at the bottom or here, some user is typing. So v4 user is typing, and here on the footer, we want to do just a p or a div and say these and these and these users are typing. So let's just make it really small. Adding like the same as the other text, we're gonna do smaller text and italic. Let's do it here. Typing. Let's try what it does. There we go. Something like that, right? I think it looks better on top than on above than below. And so here, what I want to do is to say users typing text. I'm going to use a computer property for that. And I only want it if user is typing length greater than 0. All right. What is it complaining here? It's possibly undefined. right? In that case, case different from 0 also works. And now I go here, const users typing text. Computed. And so here, what do we want? If there is one user, we're going to just simplify the case and just say some user is typing. So if props dot user is typing dot length equals 1, we're just going to return user. This is going to be annoying, but users typing. Okay, props dot users typing dot length at 0 dot there we go. The name is typing. Let's see. Good. Then what we can do is, so otherwise we will have to do user this is typing. But at the same time, I think we should filter the users. We should do these return, and here we do something like, or what do I put user? It doesn't make any sense. So just props dot users typing dot map, and here, instead of doing a map, even better, it's unique users. I wish I had a unique. Well, I'm not going to do it because I think I'm running out of time. But ideally, I would filter the array of users here to just have no duplicates. Then I check the length, and then I return something like users.map, and here I can do user.main. And so then I can do a join. I can do end here, are typing. Okay. Let's see how that works. It just goes over a little bit. But I would also just cut it if the users were more than 2 and say user, someone, or 3 users are typing. We can also do that. If props.users typing.length is greater than 3, it's not the best way to do it, but we could say return, and then here props.users typing.length. People are typing. There you go. Let's just do these. If props.users typing.length return. I'm just a little bit tired of writing the the operator here. There we go. Let's see. Okay. Let me take the tab real quick. Spanning to the whole width seems okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna change too much of the style, to be honest. It's fun to do, but it's not the main point, I think, for me to explain the correction.
You're getting ahead and answering all the questions that we have for you too.
Oh, sorry. What are the questions?
No, you're good. You're good. That is something that we appreciate, and having the communication with the audience and helping them learn is so important. So
I do my
thank
best,
you.
but it's hard to follow. I know there is a delay on the chat, right?
Right. And it's always so I've even tried when I'm live streaming, I'm like, how do I pay attention to the chat and talking to the person and streaming? It's like there's too much. So here are the questions that you may have answered some of them already, but we're going to ask them again just so that way they're in this, in the Q&A section.
Sure.
So we will start with, are there any open source chat components that you have experience with that could be useful for a similar application?
No, you usually write these things yourself. This is part of the job of a developer. I feel like finding a whole chat component would be like cheating. And also it wouldn't really match the expectations you have.
Fair enough.
So it's a good idea to do it by yourself. You have classes, you can find the CSS, which it's, in my opinion, one of the hardest part, but then the experience of the chat depends on the application you are developing, right? So you definitely don't want to use that already made component.
Mm-hmm.
It will not fit all your use cases.
I've found whenever you use a component for something, sometimes it's harder because you're editing something that already exists instead of building from scratch.
It is, yeah.
All right. What is a template ref?
Oh yeah, template ref it's a bit misleading in in terms of naming because we're using my video. Yeah, my video is not on, so I'm just gonna move the. It's a bit misleading because we are using the ref keyword in multiple places. First, we're creating a ref because we are creating a reference basically that is going to hold the HTML element, the raw HTML element. And this is a view ref. It's a variable that becomes, so it comes from it. It's undefined when it starts, and then when the component is mounted, it becomes the actual element or component. It can also be. And then we use the same ref word as an attribute on the element where we want to connect that reference to. And so it's a way, a template ref is those two things, but it's mostly the ref as an attribute, right? I sometimes wish it was named differently, like just template ref, which is also a bit longer. It's not something you should use very often. Template refs are useful when you cannot use Vue to change something in the component, in the element, sorry. So for example, you wouldn't use this to apply a class or a style or add an event listener. You will always use Vue for that. It's just easier and it will avoid headaches for reactivity and stuff like that. Here we're using the scroll position. So it's something that we could bind to with vbind, but it will still be inconvenient to set to a variable because we don't really have a reactive variable. We're just scrolling to the bottom every time there is a new message.
Got it. Thank you. And what Vue use functions do you find most useful in your day-to-day development?
I don't think my day-to-day dev is the most representative since I do a lot of open source. So I find myself writing libraries more often than applications. But I will answer this question from a perspective of application a developer and not a library one, based on the contracts I've done for other companies. Now, to be honest, I need to give it a look. So I'm just gonna Google real quick and check out the other functions. So what do we have? We have the state. The local storage, I think, is the one I use the most often. I use the most often because it's very useful to save some client-side preferences with just one line change. Other things I used are the use time ago, very useful when you need to display some relative timing. The dark has been useful as well. So that allows you to know if the user has a dark theme or light theme or nothing. Or use prefer dark. They have multiple ones. Use title. There are a few ones on. I think this is Vue use head or Vue head, which allows you to change some of the attributes of the document, and these are very useful, especially on Nuxt applications. And then we have use focus, I think, and use focus within are being useful to control, I think, to detect when the focus changes. Let me check. Use idle can be fun. It allows you to check if a user is idle or not. For Easter eggs can be fun as well. And then there is a use fetch, and there are some use async things. So basically, composables that allows you to pass a function that returns a promise, and they give you the state of the promise, which I think. Well, I also build them with Vue Promise, but I don't know if they've had one in Vue use. And then there are the other tools you want to go more advanced, but these are not as used as often. These are the until and whenever, which are a bit more advanced.
For this one, I think I'm going to just follow up and like tweet you about it, so that way we can put a thread out there.
Okay, sure.
No, it's so good, and it's very important. Thank you for sharing. It's also helpful to have something to go back and reference to. Next question, because we got a few more. Could a chat also implement Pinia for state management?
Would a chat also implement Pinia for state management? What? I'm not sure I get the meaning of the question.
Neither do I. I was just thinking about that.
Of course, you could use Pinia for the chat if you wanted. You could have a store, handle it. Would it make sense? It depends. You can use it, but I think that if your chat is containing a component, then the whole state is going to be in that component, and you don't need to put any store.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to get some of the other ones. Let's see. What if a user opens a chat for the first time and doesn't write any new message, but the chat already has plenty of messages causing overflow? Shouldn't we also watch for open?
Oh, here. We could pass an array to the watcher. It's not a bad idea, because the chat box, there is no unmounted. It's the kind of thing you would do on unmounted, but since the chat box is just hidden visually by CSS, then yes, it's a good idea to watch. I think just checking the code just to make sure I'm not saying anything dumb. But where did I put the watcher here? I don't even find my own watcher. Yes. So you have watch, and then instead of having just a function, you can return. I mean, you have still a function, but you return an array with the process message, and then the is open.
Cool. Thank you.
And then you check, of course, if his open is true in the callback, because you don't need to scroll if it's not.
All right. And so why do you use background white and dark background gray 200? Why do you use both?
Oh, these I replied during. This is just for
Good.
the dark theme, light theme.
Cool. And how are you getting Vue errors while coding?
So this is probably, I think they're referring to the errors I have in the editor, and this is called error lens on the. It's a VS Code extension called error lens.
Okay.
I can reply. Probably someone replied. Yeah, the people already reply.
Oh, cool. Thank you, everybody. All right. Is watching the length of an array any more performant than watching the array itself?
The short answer is yes, but it doesn't cover all the cases. You can also just watch the last element. It really depends on what you need to do.
Fair enough. And last question we have is, let us all know the extensions that you use here. It will be more helpful for starters. And I feel like that's going to take a minute. So I was thinking on the tweet, I was going to put 2 subtweets of like, what are the most useful day-to-day functions that you use, and then your extensions list, if you could share that with us that way.
Sure.
Okay, yay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Amazing as always. And up next, we have break. But before everybody goes to break, please make sure that you go follow Eduardo on our homepage. It definitely shows how to reach out, also Twitter. And yes, stay tuned for more. Thank you, Eduardo.
Thank you.